Do you remember your grandparents? Of course you do. What about your great grandparents? You might remember their names, but you might not remember what they were like as people. You might not remember what their life was like. And what about their parents or their parents before them? A normal person is lost to time within 3 to 4 generations of their death. A famous person might be lucky to survive 3 to 400 years. And then all that remains are stories, myths, and legends. And eventually, even those are gone, leaving behind only ruins. And time even wears those down, leaving behind no trace that a human ever lived there. You see, there is one way to fight against this march of time, and that is to write things down. People find these written documents from old civilizations and read them and interpret them. That's the job of a historian. There are civilizations whom we can no longer hear speak, and our story as Indians begins with one such civilization. Indus Valley did have a writing system, most prominently featured here. We don't know what any of this means. What we speculate is that this is a passport with the name of a person on top of it and their clan emblem right below it. But until we can translate it, that's all we can do, speculate. So then, if there's nothing written, how do we know anything about this place? You see, over time, a civilization gets buried under a layer of sediment. And then that sediment builds up until it's underground. To excavate it and dig it out is the job of an archaeologist. They look at how the city is organized and how the people are buried or how their pottery is to understand how the civilization was. And when in 1920s British archaeologists started finding these kind of artifacts, they grew curious, and so they had to dig it out. What they found was truly magical. They found a civilization that spread all the way from Balochistan to Yamuna, from Hind Kush to Maharashtra. What seems even more interesting is that despite this huge area that it occupied, the way things were built and the way pottery was done remained mostly the same across the whole land. This suggests that there was a central authority that kept everything standardized. The way that these cities were organized was so that it was divided into two halves. One upper half where the richer folks lived and one lower half where the poorer folks lived. The upper half had bigger houses and verandas and everything else and lower density in their streets. And the lower half had more houses and more density and smaller houses. But despite the wealth disparity, every house had a separate washing area, as well as the fact that every house was connected to a drainage system. What's even more interesting is that there was no palace or even any monuments or temples or any community center. All they had was this one bathhouse in Mohenjo-daro, and we don't know what it functioned as. Its function could have just been a community center where people got together to bathe together, or it could have served a religious purpose where people believed that water was sacred. Look closely at this seal. The figure depicted here is shown to be doing an advanced yoga pose that yogis still perform to this day. This suggests that there is a possible yogic tradition that has lasted since the start of Indus Valley. And this is called the Pashupati seal, which is another name for the Hindu god Shiva. Many Indian archaeologists believe that this seal depicts him. We can never be sure, but it is fascinating to think about the possibility that at least Shiva worship has existed since the time of Indus Valley. Now, all the references to the Harappan civilization ended around 1700 BC, and all artifacts stopped popping up from around 1400 BC. So, this civilization fell somewhere in between then. So, how did it fall? I mean, if it was so glorious, how did it end? There are three answers as to how it fell. And we don't have any concrete answers, so these are all just theories. And which theory you subscribe to depends on what political ideology you subscribe to. So it's a multiple choice question. The first choice affirms the Aryan invasion theory. There is evidence that Mohenjo-daro in specific fell to a great invasion. There was great violence where people were attacked and left where they died. There are even references in Rig Veda of Indra, the king of the Vedic people, raising whole city. So people have connected these two events together and thought that gives credence to the fact that Aryans came in and destroyed Indus Valley and subjugated them and made them the lower caste. It has largely been debunked, but there are still some people who peddle it. The second choice is that of climate change. Over time, what happened was that around 2200 BC to 1200 BC, the climate around the world changed, making some places full of drought and some places flood. And something similar happened to the Indus Valley. The western half flooded and the eastern half dried out. In fact, there was even a river called Saraswati that flowed from between Ganga Valley and the Indus Valley, and it dried out. So what the people did was that they moved further inland to India and later became the Dravidians of India. The third choice is that the Indus Valley never really fell. The gap in between the fall of Indus Valley and the last reference to Indus Valley and when Rig Veda was composed does not exist. The last bit of evidence of Indus Valley comes from 1400 BC, while Rig Veda was composed around 1500 BC. So people speculate that it was the people from Indus Valley that wrote Rig Veda, and maybe through climate change or change in preference started shifting eastward. Now all three of these can be proven wrong. It's a very muddy period. Basically, all of Indian history before the Gupta period suffers from the same fate, and we have multiple interpretations from the same limited material that we have from that time. So we'll be exploring how Indus Valley fell and the three different theories in details in the next video. So see you there.